to push record. I put a little sticky note so I don't forget. And so we are going to plan on recording this. And what I'd like you guys to do is just go and introduce yourself. Maybe just say how long you've been with CASA, and just your history with the organization. And I see Karen and Bob. Since your cameras aren't on, I can't tell if you're there, but I'm going to go ahead and start with Dale. Hi, Dale.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm Dale, and I've been with CASA for going on 2 years now. So I'm on my second case, and I've been enjoying the trainings and so forth. So looking forward to this one.
Thanks. Karen.
Hi, I am a newbie. I think I'm starting my case next week. It's my first one, so yeah, I'm excited about it.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah,
she just got sworn in just the other day.
Oh, like just last week. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Elise.
Hi, I'm Elise Kitzman, and I have been at CASA for about 6 months now, and we're on case 2.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Quiet. I've been at CASA since I think last February, and my case, I'm on my first case, but the child has recently been reunited with the mother, and so we're kind of in a monitoring stage and cleaning up some final things, making sure things continue to go well. So I may be starting a new case soon.
Oh, great. Thank you. Miss Karen.
Hi, Beck. This is like just started. I'm on first case and loving it so far.
Great. Bob. Hey, Bob.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Bob Hoyle. I've been at CASA for about 3 years, and I'm on my second case, which happens to be an ICWA case, which has been interesting.
Wow.
Very cool.
Great.
Cool. Well, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Barb. Many of you know her and have seen her in live. Some of you have not. She's going to be co-hosting, but basically taking over from here. So Barb, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and it's all yours.
Thanks, Becca. So I am Barbara Lyle. I'm the grants manager for CASA. I've been employed with CASA for going on 7 years. It'll be 7 years in April, and I have been a volunteer for 2 years. And I have 2 cases right now, but one of them was previously, it was my first case and has come back into the system. So a total of 3 cases for me, but 2 of them have unfortunately been the same case. So that's a bummer. I'm really happy to see all of you. As the grants manager, I'm kind of behind the scenes more. I mean, I come to our events and stuff, but don't get to see your faces much like Becca and the SBCs do. So it's nice to see you all. Thank you for coming. I have to tell you, I am a little bit nervous. This is my first Zoom presentation, so hopefully you'll bear with me. Also, I want to say this is really quite informal, so if you have questions as we go along, please just feel free to ask. We can make this definitely more of a discussion than me just talking, so that would be great. With that said, I'm going to share my screen. Just a second here. Just realized I'm at the end of my PowerPoint, so let me get back to the beginning before I share. All right. There we go. Does everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so as you know, we're here to talk about development. I am on the development team, and there are 4 of us on the development team. We have a marketing and communications, or excuse me, marketing development director, who's Heidi Weissman. And then Abby, who most of you undoubtedly know, our recruitment manager, is also technically part of development, kind of a dotted line between development and program team. And then Alicia Mueller, who works with her as well as part of our development team. We actually have a couple of positions that are open right now, a development manager and an events coordinator. So we're a little bit short-staffed, but happy to be able to do what we do. So I wanted to just start out with a little bit of history. I think most of you probably know all of this information, but wanted to share it as kind of a background. So CASA was started in Seattle in 1977. Our CASA is celebrating 20 years this year, so that's exciting. Don't know if you know, there are nearly 1,000 programs across the US, but they're structured differently depending on what state they're in. Some programs are really state centralized. Other programs kind of fall under the GAL structure. So in Colorado, we are a little different. We're all separate nonprofit organizations set up by judicial district. So we obviously serve the 17th, which is Adams and Broomfield counties. So what does it mean to be a 501c3 nonprofit? So this is our first little quiz of the day. An organization exempt from paying taxes. It must meet specific IRS regulations. Donations to the organization are tax deductible, or all of the above.
All the above.
All of the.
You guys are so smart.
All the above. Yeah.
You got it.
I'm hoping you will expand on what IRS regulations.
You know what? I'm actually not going to expand too much, to be honest with you, Steve.
Okay.
But we are, so it's the 501c3 designation refers to that part of the tax code, right, that governs us.
Okay.
So we're charitable and tax exempt. I can tell you a few things about it. So one of the things that as a 501c3 is we don't give funds to other organizations, right? So we use the funds for our purposes. Some of the other things, like we have to fill out a 990 every year. That's like our tax requirement. So those are kind of the big things. I don't know the tax code. So,
Okay.
but then also a huge part of that is that donations to our organization are tax deductible for the donor. So that's a huge benefit to our donors. I also wanted to mention at this point that as a 501c3 and as an organization that serves children, we qualify for the Colorado Child Tax Care Credit. And so on your state taxes, if you donate to a program that qualifies under that tax care or child care tax credit, you can actually get a tax credit up to 50% of your donation. So let's say you make $1,000 donation to CASA, you're really only paying $500 because that $500 will come back to you as a credit on your taxes. So it's really an awesome opportunity. And so you guys, yeah, we're talking about raising money, but you all are our greatest asset. There's no question about it. And so I have another question for you here. What % of Americans volunteer? Any ideas?
30.
20.
20.
I like it. 30 is correct. So according to the National Philanthropic Trust, about 30% of Americans volunteer, contributing $167 billion of labor, which is amazing. So you guys are among kind of a small group, but also an impressive one. And in case you didn't know, in fiscal year 2020, and we run on a fiscal year of July 1st to June 30th. So we just finished our fiscal year 2020 in June. So all of you and your our other volunteers donated 19,474 hours at a value of $574,000. So that's pretty amazing. So with all of those funds, if you will, why is development so important to us? You guys are doing all the direct work. You're working with the children and the caseworkers and the guardian ad litem. So why do we focus on development? In other words, why do we need to raise funds? So I kind of wanted to highlight these 3 areas in particular. You may or may not know, we don't charge any fees for service. The families don't pay for our services. The county, the department, the courts, we don't charge any fees. So that's a steady stream that some other organizations have that we just don't have. As a nonprofit, we have to fundraise our budget every year, our entire operating budget. So year over year, we're trying to identify where those funds are going to come from. And then I wanted to talk about the costs. So it costs about $1,200 per child per year for us to provide CASA volunteers. And you might wonder what that entails. Well, you all have your own SPC, Senior Program Coordinator. So actually, as a point of law in Colorado, our CASA volunteers have to have some professional supervision. So our SPCs are a big chunk of that cost. Marketing and outreach to spread awareness. Obviously, you all have been recruited to do this. We have to find new volunteers all the time. So we try marketing. We do outreach opportunities at community fairs when there are community fairs happening. Abby and Alicia are out all over the community just trying to find new volunteers for us. And then, of course, the recruitment process itself. And finally, screening and training. So you know it costs us some money to do the background checks. And then, of course, Becca is an amazing training manager who has, I see some head shaking. So all of those costs are kind of what makes up our program costs. But I want to point out to you that is all, or so much of that is personnel expenses. And sometimes that's hard for folks to understand. Like if you give money to a food bank, you can assume that they're using some of that money to buy food. We don't have any of those hard products. It's all our professionalism and our staff. So a big chunk of our actual budget is personnel costs. Then I wanted to show you, so for our last fiscal year that we just finished in June, I want to talk about expenses. So you'll see the big blue area of our pie chart is program services. That's all the things we just talked about on the previous page. And then we do have 20% of our funds go to fundraising and 3% go to administrative, kind of the overhead of the operation. And if you've given to nonprofits before, you may already know, but it's kind of best practice that nonprofits operate so their administrative expenses only make up 10% or less of their budget. And then for fundraising, it's 25 or less. So we feel like we're in pretty good shape here in terms of how we spend our money. And then on the revenue side, this is kind of the heart of what we want to talk about today. So you can see that grants make up, at least last year, grants made up almost half of our budget. And that's kind of what I do, so I can talk more about that. We do get some legislative funding. So we get some money directly from the state legislature in Colorado. It's passed through our Colorado CASA to all of the programs, depending on size and how many kids you serve is how we get that money. So that made up about 10% of our budget. Another 26% is our events. You know that we have events that we promote throughout the year. And I will tell you, last year that was a smaller percent of our budget than normal. With COVID and the pandemic and the restrictions all put in place, we didn't make quite as much money on our events as we usually do. So that was a smaller piece of the pie. But then the part of the pie I really want to talk about is the donor investment. So that's our individual donors, and that's a piece of the pie that we feel we can grow and we need to grow to sustain, because with the pandemic and the economic turmoil happening right now, I think grants are fairly steady, but we never quite know what the economy is going to do to those foundations and those government entities that give us grants. And then our events have been so heavily impacted. So we feel like the donor investment, individual donors, is where we can really make up some ground there. So I will talk about grants and events. This is my area. That's probably why this slide has the most information, because I know it. But you might find it interesting. So we have, last year we had 25 funders, which is pretty typical for us. And then I wanted to break them down for you, just if you're interested. So we get a big chunk of our grant revenue from the government grants. We get a federal grant, which is the Victims of Crime Act, VOCA. And those funds actually are passed through the state, and they come from federal crime fees. So if you're a federal criminal, you pay a fee that goes into a big pot called VOCA, and then they pass that out to the states and then on to nonprofits and others. Our judicial district is the Victims Assistance and Law Enforcement Grant. Again, that's actually fees paid by criminals. And so if criminal activity is down, sadly their funds are down. So that's kind of a weird situation, but it seems to be that there's always fees in that pot, unfortunately. And then we get money from the counties and the municipalities. Unfortunately, Adams County suspended their funding due to the pandemic, so we haven't gotten anything from them recently, but we typically get funding from both counties. And then several of our municipalities have human service grants of some type. And then a smaller chunk is from foundations. That's community, corporate, private. So many companies have a giving arm, which is a foundation. For instance, last year we got money from United Power. We get money from Platte Valley Medical Center. We get some funds from INT Credit Union, from Credit Union of Colorado, but those are fairly small grants. And then we have some private foundations and community foundations as well. And then last year, we got some funding from National CASA. That's not always the case. They don't always have grants available. And we happened to get 2 of them last year. The good news about this mentoring grant you see is that it's a 2-year grant. So we're getting that funding again in fiscal year 21. So that's funding we can count on.
Nice.
And then I will talk a little bit about our events. So hopefully you've attended or at least have heard about our events. These are our 3 major events that we do every year. And these are the actual dates for 2021 if you want to participate. But another way that, a big way that we raise money from our events is through these sponsorships. So individuals can sponsor, we try to get companies to sponsor. The city of Westminster is always a great sponsor. So some Adams County, so even some of our municipalities and the counties also do sponsorships. But there are several different sponsorship levels. And that's how we make a good chunk of the funds from these events. And then of course the individuals who attend. Our Indulge for CASA event that just took place in September was a hybrid event. We had a virtual component and a smaller in-person component. If you got to go, it's a really fun event. So we're planning to do that next year again in September. Our Light of Hope is our annual Ask event. So it's a luncheon and or breakfast where you bring your friends. The food is free and we get to tell you about CASA and why it's so important. And then the CASA Classic Golf Tournament in May will happen again. So yeah. Bob, did you have a question?
No, huh?
Oh, I thought you were raising your hand.
No, I was just scratching my elbow.
I'm with you. I guess I'm tired. I guess I'm tired of hearing myself talk. Well, good. We have another question. So in 2018, the largest source of charitable giving was, where did that come from, do you think?
Individuals.
Elise, you're so smart. Actually, that's correct. And I think this is somewhat surprising because when you think about, the corporations that the foundations that the Gates Foundation, the Ford Foundation, which is a corporate foundation, there's a lot of big companies and foundations who give a lot of money every year. So the fact that individuals give the most and at this rate was surprising to me. 68% of the charitable giving was individuals in 2018. So another reason that we want to focus there, if you remember our pie chart, we only had about 20% of our pie coming from individuals. So we're a bit out of whack with this stat. So how do you give to CASA? You can make a one-time donation. You can go to our website. There's a link called Ways to Donate, or excuse me, Donate Now. You can click there, fill out your information, put in your credit card number, make a gift, super easy and secure. At that same web address, you can make a recurring monthly donation. So we have a handful of donors who choose to give monthly, $10 a month, $20 a month, whatever your level might be. It's super easy. You don't have to think about it. It's just getting done every month. Workplace giving. If you work for a company, they may offer either a match for your donations and or they may let you give donations right out of your check. So you get a portion of your check going to a charitable donation, and then you can designate which charity gets those funds. We have a handful of donors who do that, but then also if your company matches your donations, we definitely want to be part of that. So if you give $200, they may match it at 50% or 100%, and we would also get that money from the company. And then of course you can participate in our events and campaigns. So you saw the events on the previous slide. At Indulge every year, we have the silent and live auction. We get all of those items donated to us. So you can either donate items and or you can bid and buy the items that we auction off. And then right now we have a t-shirt campaign going on. Hopefully you've heard about it. Alicia Mueller was able to find this opportunity with Bonfire. So we don't have to hold any of the t-shirts. So we don't have to hold any of the stock. They ship directly from their company and we get a portion of the proceeds. So it's actually a really nice opportunity. I don't know if you looked at them, but they're super cute. Yeah, they have the Hope series, and then we have also some for Change a Child's Story. There's sweatshirts, there's t-shirts, several colors, and they're really awesome. So good Christmas gift if anybody is interested in CASA. But you can check it out at these two addresses. And then I have one more question for you. So nearly what percentage or fraction of charitable giving happens in the month of December?
Third to a half.
I'd say half.
Yeah. Most.
A third. So 31% happens in December, but 12% comes in the last 3 days. So people are thinking, I assume for tax purposes, that they are going to give their year-end gift. So we are also participating in the year-end giving campaign. Many of you may have heard of Colorado Gives Day, which is coming up on Tuesday, December 8th. You can set up a donation to lots of organizations or just to CASA or whomever. But as part of our year-end giving campaign, our goal is to raise $100,000. We have had a generous donor agree to match funds up to $100,000. So we're really trying to get to that level. And we're really trying to just expand our donor base in general, and get people more involved in that end of the program. So that is actually all I have for you in terms of the presentation. I want you to know that we are so grateful for our volunteers. You truly are our greatest asset. We couldn't do our work without you. So it's amazing the time and dedication that you give, and we really appreciate it. I am happy to listen to any questions, or we can chat, or whatever works for you guys.
A question.
I've
Yeah.
got a question.
The new companies that come into town, it seemed like every year we get 2 or 3 new companies at least into Broomfield County, and of course we've got Amazon out here.
Mm-hmm.
How does that, trying to look at it from your standpoint, I would think, you'd have a desire to try to reach out to those folks right away and get on their list and ingratiate CASA to their folks. How do you do that? How does that work?
Bob, if you have an answer, no. Yeah. It's hard, because as you can imagine, other people are thinking that way. So what we found is the easiest way to get into a company is through an employee. So many companies right now say we support the organizations where our employees live and work and what they support. So we don't have that person at Amazon yet. That's one of the reasons we're trying to outreach to our volunteers and find out where you work. I mean, do you have a connection? So I can tell you, we have been working with the city of Westminster to get into some of those companies. But it is hard. I mean, there are lots of nonprofits. There are lots of other things going on. And so we are competing with them. But we are working on that. And I think that's something that Heidi will continue to work on. She actually came from the Denver Art Museum and worked a lot with companies. So she's going to be kind of our point of contact on getting in touch with new companies and that sort of thing. Of course, the pandemic has thrown a huge wrench in all of this. So we're working through that as well.
On my company's website, they have, we record our volunteer hours, and they also have a place, an opportunities page. I've been trying to find out internally who runs it.
Perfect.
I mean, and then it possibly give you that information, but it's been kind of funny because I can't just go down to IT and ask right now.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
And so it's a little bit more challenging. But
yeah, that's a great example. We have a handful of volunteers who turn in their volunteer hours and I should have mentioned that actually in terms of matching gifts from companies. Some companies will match your volunteer hours, not just the money you give, and we'll get a donation. I know Excel Energy is one of those off the top of my head. So it's another thing to think about. And in terms of grants, so the other thing related to your question, Bob, is these companies have different pots of money. They have marketing money, so they might be willing to do a sponsorship at one of our events. And then oftentimes they have philanthropic dollars, which either comes through grants or their matching gifts or that sort of thing. But employees are really the best way to get into a company. So.
Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you have like the Light of Hope luncheon, it's fairly common, I'd say at least half of the people that attend probably give some sort of donation at the luncheon.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of percentage donations do you get on something like that? And what's an average donation at an event like that?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't know if I know either of those answers specifically.
Okay.
We have been doing. We have been doing
$10 or $500.
Yeah, so we have been doing pledges at Light of Hope in the past. So we ask you to
Okay.
pledge $20 a month, and many people do that. In terms of the percentage of people who attend who donate, I don't even know if we have a good way to know that, to be honest with you.
Okay. Okay.
But we're trying to move away a little bit from the pledge into the recurring donation because it's more consistent. So there's no end date. I mean, you can put an end date on it.
Cash flow.
Yeah, we're trying to.
Makes cash flow easier.
Exactly.
I have another question or comment.
Good.
From the standpoint of those of us who pick up the mail, particularly in Broomfield County, you have Val Swan, and you have the Broomfield Foundation, and you have Precious Child, and you have Fish,
Yes.
and then you have CASA. And so I know a year or so ago, in our Rotary Club, we had requests for us to look at tables for some of these fundraising events, and they were all within 30 days of each other, or at least
Yeah.
2 or 3 of them were. And so I look at that and I think, all right, all of these folks are doing a good job and addressing concerns within the community. How do you respond to those folks like myself who would say, you know, I don't have that kind of wherewithal to write a check for several $100s for all of those folks within a 90-day period. And maybe part of that answer is this recurring thing you were talking about, but it's a bit frustrating when you've got that many of them out there and you're trying to figure out, do I support one this year and another one next year? And how do you respond to that?
Well, I think I respond from my own personal experience, and I feel your frustration and for me, it's a little bit of angst. Like there's so many good causes that I want to support. So I think in terms of that, I think if you can do a smaller recurring gift, that might be easier. If part of the Rotary, that's kind of different, but as an individual, you know, if you give us $10 a month and we invite you to Light of Hope and you decide not to come, that's okay. I mean, we get it. So from our perspective, we just push out information and try to expand our reach as much as possible. We understand that people like you who are engaged and doing things, that might be overkill for you, but we're trying to reach the people that are not engaged like you are, if that makes sense. So in terms of deciding what to do, it's hard. I mean, those are all fantastic organizations and they all, you know, are worthy of your charitable dollars. So we do try to partner with some of those. We obviously partner with the Precious Child hugely. So we try to collaborate so that your dollars aren't repetitive in terms of services. And you guys know CASA is the only program of its kind. So we are a little different that way. But I guess I don't have a great answer. I guess that's from my own personal perspective. I think it is hard and sometimes frustrating. And at some point I just have to start to ignore some of the requests that I get because yeah, it can be overwhelming.
You guys have much luck going through social media doing fundraisers where if you send your volunteers links specifically to something that they can send out, how much have you guys done with that?
You mean like they can send out to ask for funds from friends, that kind of thing?
Just sharing it. And, you know, if you did like a nice video, a fundraiser, you have a certain mark you want to hit and it goes kind of, try to get it to go viral through your friends and family. And have you had much luck raising money online?
I don't think we've raised a ton of money that way. We certainly push things out. We've never asked our volunteers specifically to, I mean, we ask everybody to share, right? So that's kind of a general request. We've never made a specific request that says, hey, can you send this to raise this much money? I don't know that we've done it exactly that way. You know, we certainly can look at it. I think what we're trying to do too, though, is to build our donor base among our volunteers and stakeholders that are already here, and then try to spread from there. Because quite honestly, we haven't done a great job of that in that aspect. So we're trying to get there to build some more relationships, to to do a better job linking program and development side so that we're working together and helping understand that, you know, funds are vital for our program. So creating that culture of philanthropy.
Sounds like a great idea, though.
Yeah, it is a good idea. And I will definitely bring it up as our next development team meeting to.
I just think about the university I used to go to. They do a lot of fundraising where they, you know, you see something every day or every week that, you know, just scrolling through, it's a nice reminder. You don't necessarily have to act, but it kind of keeps you in the loop. And I feel like after a while, if you see it, I think you're more inclined to, you know what, I'm going to give $25 or
Yeah.
I just feel like the online, and I think you could continue to build that base. I mean, I have relationships with those people, but having it through social media has been kind of a nice.
It is, yeah. So let me throw that back to you. So we have this year-end giving campaign coming up, and you probably received an email yesterday. Yesterday was Tuesday about it, and we're going to be pushing out emails for the next, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And I know it's going to be on social media as well. Do you guys see that? Do you respond to those things?
I'm probably more likely to do the social media just because I'm sitting down, I'm a little more relaxed. I feel like I get inundated with so much email that it's overwhelming. They're typically really long. They're not short and sweet. And so there's just something I think that is nice with a social media aspect. So,
yeah.
And I don't know if it would help trying to get a younger generation in too.
Yeah. So definitely there will be social media posts that you'll see if you follow us on Facebook.
Yep.
It'll be a huge part of our campaign. So that's kind of the idea that you're talking about, right? Pushing these things out on social media. I don't know how effective we've been because we definitely, try to schedule everything and we work really hard on the messaging and, what it's going to look like. So, but like I said, I don't know that we've ever done anything really specifically to say, can you send this to 15 friends because we need to raise this much money. But we definitely utilize social media, and Alicia's doing a fantastic job of putting those posts together. Yeah. So you'll be seeing those too if you follow us on Facebook.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say the social media, it makes it whatever way you can do to make it easy to make the donation, makes it more attractive to do it that way, I guess, as opposed to like us old guys writing out a check or something, putting it in the mail because we got some type of mailing and so forth. But you put do a donation online. That makes it a lot easier going that way. And I think people, if they react immediately to it, and you hit them at just the right moment, maybe too. I don't know.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how we do with this year-end campaign because we'll be able to track that, like in terms of when the donations come in. And I don't know about.
What I'll do.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll follow Casa of Adams and Broomfield on Facebook, and then when I see your requests for donations, I'll forward them on to my friend. So,
that would be amazing. That's exactly.
I don't think I've followed you on social media up till now.
Ah, yes, and maybe we should send an email. Let me ask you this question. Do you pay more attention to communications from your SPCs and would you find it offensive? I don't know if that's the right word. If your SPCs reach out and say, hey, you need to, if you're not following us on Facebook, you need to do that. And we're doing this year-end campaign. I mean, is it okay with you to get those kind of messages from your SPCs?
I think it would be fine as a request of, maybe make that request, 3 or 4 times a year. Hey, if you're not following us on Facebook, we'd appreciate it. Not as something you have to do, but just a request.
Okay.
And you might put in there, what it would really help us if you'd follow us, and when you see a request for donations, if you'd share it with people.
Yeah.
Just increase that breadth of people you're getting in touch with, and who knows, it might bring in volunteer from a company like Amazon that you're not getting right now that might give you an in to one of those companies.
Yeah,
to,
that's, yeah.
ask for both volunteers and for money.
I think that's great feedback. I think, and nobody in particular, but I think there's been some hesitation on the program team side, the SPCs, to send out that kind of material to volunteers, because your relationship with them is quite sacred. I mean, you talk about very specific things, and we want to respect that. So
Yeah,
we're
and the other thing is we have to remind ourselves and each other on social media of confidentiality, and
right.
But if we're doing anything, I've kind of avoided CASA on social media other than just saying, hey, it's a great organization, just to keep away from conflict of confidentiality.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's something I can definitely start integrating into pre-service, because we go through the website a little bit, but I never show people how to like us on Facebook ever.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great, Becca.
Didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
I usually try to share the cookie when the cookies were going. I'd share with my family and friends, and we'd get some orders in for the Christmas cookies. But I just wondered if there's a way, end of year is coming, if you want a good cause to support, or you need to do a tax, donation. I just think it would be kind of nice to throw that out there and see what could happen.
Perfect. I love that idea. So yeah, I'll talk to our team next week when we meet and just talk. I'm sure we'll talk through some of the messaging anyway, but talk about that, how that could help our volunteers to get that message out there too.
Have you guys signed up with the companies for car donations?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Have you signed up with, there's a lot of charitable organizations do the car donations, like
Yep.
CPR. It's a huge part of their budget.
Right.
And I know that it basically, you can outsource it, and it's, as far as the organization goes doing it, it's basically you get a check because they take it, they auction it off, and it's
right.
just, yeah.
I don't know that we have a current relationship or that we ever have. I will tell you, from my perspective, you talked about CPR. I hear their commercials too. I mean,
Right.
they're statewide. We are really so localized, which helps us in terms of getting community involvement, but it also it doesn't hurt us, but in those situations, our stakeholders are such a smaller group because it's just Adams and Broomfield counties in many ways, that those kind of programs often don't pan out in terms of the cost versus the benefit that we get.
Okay, because I thought it was just a percentage of the car if you actually got one. I didn't think there was any like upfront cost to it.
I don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
But those kinds of things, I think, again, being really community focused in Adams and Broomfield counties is helpful, especially for volunteers and that sort of thing. But then when you start thinking about competing against other organizations, we're so small. And then there's other CASA organizations across Metro Denver. So it actually might benefit us to do that through Colorado CASA even. So that's something we could think about.
Because it's a non-cash way of, a lot of people who, you get to a certain age and you just don't want to sell your car. You deal with any of that, and you just rather give it away.
Absolutely.
Just thoughts.
Bob, were you going to ask another question?
I'm just going to say, I think Karen's point's well taken. I know Val Swan, sometimes they don't promote it, but it's on their website. And I know that in the past, our family's donated more than one car through Val Swan. And as Karen mentioned, it's not, as far as I can understand, they really don't get involved in it. You make a call, they pick up the car, and Val Swan gets a check, and you get a notice of what your donation is.
Okay.
So I think it's definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, we can look into it.
But the other thing I was going to ask, do you have, occasionally, do you have conversations with your counterparts in the other judicial districts as far as exchanging ideas or brainstorming about some of these things?
We do. And that kind of ebbs and flows in terms of staff and what's going on around us. The pandemic has kind of thrown a wrench in a lot of things. Back in January and February, we were meeting with all the development directors. We're getting together to do just that, to talk about ideas and different approaches. I do work with my counterparts, and right now we're working on a collaborative grant proposal to the Help Colorado Now Fund to focus on recruitment. So we do some collaborative grant proposals sometimes. So we do work with our counterparts and to try to get ideas. And I know like Lindsay has gone to some of their events and vice versa. So they see what we do, we see what they do, and take the best ideas. So yeah, there's a lot of idea sharing. Anything else I can answer for you or you want to chat about?
Is there anything else that we can do to help support CASA?
Well, you're already doing it, but the fact that you're here is amazing. I would say just share as much as you can. Obviously, recruitment is always an issue for us, and fundraising. So if you can share it with your friends and family. The cookies were nice. You mentioned the cookie campaign, Elise. That was a nice way to say, here's something tangible, right? We're not doing that anymore. And with the pandemic, I don't know how we would have done it. But that was a nice way to do, to have something tangible to send to your family and friends. But if you can just spread the word, like you said, end of year's coming. If you're looking for an organization to donate to, this was a great one. I think that messaging and sharing it is really helpful. And then in terms, again, if you work for a company or if you know a family foundation or anything like that, grant wise, I'm happy to vet all of those things and go through them. So, but just, I guess my parting message would be just keep that in the back of your head. Like, oh, I'm meeting Joe Schmo for the first time. And, I just heard that he has a family foundation. Well, let me connect that, that sort of thing. So just keep it in the back of your head in terms of ways that you can talk either to your friends, family, new people, work, coworkers, whatever. And that helps us actually the most is word of mouth in every aspect, recruitment, fundraising, everything.
No.
I had a question on when you're writing grants. I assume there's a lot of paperwork to be filled out to do that.
You assume
About
yes.
how many hours on a grant does it usually take?
Oh, wow. That's such a good question, and I've never really tracked it. It varies. I will tell you it varies. So lots of our funders are repeat funders, which means year over year they fund us, but we have to do a proposal every year. Those proposals are way easier than brand new proposals, right? So like Help Colorado Now is the governor's fund that they raise money for. And we actually, our own CASA program was just funded in the August round. They've had 6 rounds. This is the 7th that we're applying to. So in the 6th round, we did get some funding. And so that was a lot of language that I hadn't done before. I had to write specifically for the pandemic. That probably took me, I don't know, half a day, probably a day to get it, to get a good draft and then to go back and review it, of course. Sometimes it just depends on, if I have writer's block, which happens sometimes. But the repeat proposals are definitely easier than the brand new proposals. And the other thing I will say, once you have done a couple of grants, the funders tend to ask very similar questions. So I can use a lot of previous language, which helps a ton. So.
Hey, I have to step away. Barb, thank you so much. I will let you wrap up this meeting. It was good to see everybody. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Becca.
Thanks, you too, Becca.
Thanks.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Is there anything else I can address? If so, Barbara at CASA 17th, that's my email address. Feel free to shoot me an email. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you find out that there's a grant available, I'd love to look into it. But you can reach out to your SPC as well, and they can forward the information. But I will definitely take some of the suggestions you shared today back to our team, and we'll talk through them. And I'm so grateful that you all attended and wanted to learn more. And thank you for all your service. It's amazing, and we're so grateful for our volunteers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Have a happy Thanksgiving, all of you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.